Hello everyone, and welcome back to the lecture number 7, Scrum Framework. So we've talked about agile approach in general. We looked at different frameworks, and now I want to discuss in detail Scrum Framework, which is the most popular framework that is used in IT. So, and before we continue with Scrum Framework, I want to give you like an overview of existing agile frameworks and practices, because people sometimes can confuse practices and frameworks. Yes, so agile is an umbrella term for various agile frameworks such as Scrum, Kanban, Crystal, Extreme Programming, XP, Feature-Driven Development, and SAFe, which is Scaled Agile Framework. And then these agile frameworks, they use various practices such as time boxing, stories, daily stand-ups, frequent demos, test-driven development, information radiators, retrospectives, and continuous integration. And as you are getting more knowledge about project management, it's better for you to understand these differences. Now let's continue with the Scrum framework. It's a light framework that helps people, teams, and organizations generate value through adaptive solutions for complex projects. So Scrum requires a Scrum Master to foster an environment where a product owner orders the work for a complex problem into a product backlog. The Scrum team turns a selection of the work into an increment of value during a sprint, and then the Scrum team and its stakeholders inspect the results and adjust for the next sprint. And then it repeats in the next sprint. So this is like in a nutshell the Scrum framework. Now let's take a look at the Scrum in more detail. So it is incomplete on purpose. So it is only defined the parts required to implement Scrum theory. So it is built upon the collective intelligence of the people using it. Yes, rather than provide people with detailed instructions, Scrum just gives the relationships and interactions. And you can use the best practices for various processes, techniques, and methods. And Scrum wraps around existing practices or renders them unnecessary. So Scrum makes visible the relative efficacy of current management, environment, and work techniques so that improvements can be made as you get more experience while using Scrum. So Scrum is founded on empiricism and lean thinking. So empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience, yes, from executing the project and making decisions based on what is observed. And lean thinking reduces waste and focuses on the essentials. So Scrum employs an iterative incremental approach to optimize predictability and to control risk. So Scrum engages groups of people who collectively have all the skills and expertise to do the work and share or acquire such skills as needed. That's why it's not so easy to implement pure Scrum, because you need a dedicated team of professionals who know what to do and when. Yes, so and it's hard to keep such disciplined team together for the whole duration of the project. So Scrum combines 4 formal events for inspection and adaptation within a containing event, the sprint. Yes, and these events work because they implement the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So let's take a brief look at each pillar. So transparency, it's an emergent process and work that must be visible to those performing the work as well as those receiving the work, so that you can get a better collaboration between various stakeholders and Artifacts that have low transparency can lead to decisions that diminish value and increase the risk of unsuccessful product or service. And transparency in its turn enables inspection, and inspection without transparency is misleading and wasteful. So the next Scrum pillar is inspection. So the Scrum artifacts and the progress toward agreed goals should be inspected frequently and diligently to detect potentially undesirable variances or problems so that you can fix them. And in order to help with the inspection, Scrum provides cadence in the form of its 5 events. So inspection enables adaptation, and inspection without adaptation is considered pointless. So Scrum events are designed to provoke change, yes, because we're talking about adaptive approach where changes are welcomed. So adaptation, if any aspects of a process deviate outside acceptable limits, or if the resulting product is unacceptable, the process being applied or the materials being produced must be adjusted. So the adjustment must be made as soon as possible to minimize further deviation. And adaptation becomes more difficult when the people involved are not empowered or self-managing, so they don't have power to make their own decisions. And the Scrum team is expected to adapt the moment it learns anything new through inspection and make necessary adjustments in the product or service. And here is a visual representation of a Scrum framework with 3 pillars that we discussed, and the foundation of the Scrum framework. The foundation consists of these 5 values, such as commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. Yes, so if you remember in the previous lecture, we discussed that it's not only doing agile, but also being agile. Yes, adopting agile mindset, which is important. So the Scrum team commits to achieving its goals and to supporting each other. So their primary focus is on the work of the sprint to make the best possible progress toward these goals. So the Scrum team and their stakeholders are open about the work and the challenges. So you should respect each other, be independent people, and respected as such by the people with whom they work. The Scrum team members have the courage to do the right thing, to work on tough problems, and because they have these 5 values. And these values, they give direction to the Scrum team with regard to their work, actions, and behavior. So the decisions that are made, the steps taken, and the way Scrum is used should reinforce these values, not diminish or undermine them. So the Scrum team members learn and explore the values as they work with the Scrum events and artifacts. And when these values are embodied by the Scrum team and the people they work with, the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation come to life, building trust. Yes, so while working with Scrum team, you need to think about agile mindset that is based on Scrum values and Scrum pillars. Let's talk about the Scrum team. So it is a fundamental unit of Scrum, which is a small team of 8 to 10 people, and it consists of 1 Scrum Master, 1 Product Owner, and developers. So there are no sub-teams or hierarchies in the Scrum team. It is a cohesive unit of professionals focused on one objective at a time, the product goal. So Scrum teams are cross-functional, meaning the members have all the skills necessary to create value at each sprint, and they're also self-managing, self-disciplined, meaning they internally decide who does what, when, and how. So that's why the Scrum team should consist of professionals with experience. So the Scrum team is small enough to remain nimble and large enough to complete significant work within a sprint. So typically 10 or fewer people, or you can order 2 pizzas to feed 1 Scrum team. And the smaller teams communicate better and are more productive. So if Scrum teams become too large, they should consider reorganizing into multiple cohesive Scrum teams, each focused on the same product. Therefore, they should share the same product goal, product backlog, and product owner. Yes, and instead of like working with one team, you might have 2 or 3. But then you need to think how to manage these multiple Scrum teams. So you can try to manage them by using Scrum framework, or you can use Scaled Agile framework, depending on the approach that works for this particular company. So the Scrum team is responsible for all product-related activities, from stakeholder collaboration, verification, maintenance, operation, experimentation, research and development, and anything else that might be required. As you can see, the Scrum team is responsible for all product-related activities. So the team structured and empowered by the organization to manage their own work, and working in sprints at a sustainable pace improves the Scrum team's focus and consistency. So the Scrum team is accountable for creating a valuable, useful increment every sprint, and the Scrum defines 3 specific accountabilities within the Scrum team: the developers, the product owner, and the Scrum Master. Now let's take a look at each role. So developers are the people in the Scrum team that are committed to creating any aspect of usable increment each sprint. So the specific skills needed by the developers are often broad and will vary with the domain of work, but the developers are always accountable for creating a plan for the sprint backlog, yes, at the beginning of each sprint, instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done, adapting their plan each day towards the sprint goal, and holding each other accountable as professionals. So now let's continue with the product owner, who is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. How this is done may vary widely across organizations, Scrum teams, and individuals. So product owner is accountable for effective product backlog prioritization. So as a product owner, you need to develop and explicitly communicate the product goal, create and clearly communicate product backlog items to the Scrum team, order product backlog items, and ensure that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. So product owner is responsible for prioritizing the items in the product backlog and for product backlog grooming. So the product owner may do the above work or may delegate the responsibility to others. Regardless of the delegation, the product owner remains accountable for these items. So the product owners, if they want to succeed, the entire organization must respect their decisions. And these decisions are visible in the content and ordering for the product backlog and through the inspectable increments at the sprint review. So the product owner is one person, not a committee, not a team. So the product owner may represent the needs of many stakeholders in the product backlog. Those wanting to change the product backlog can do so by trying to convince the product owner. And if he or she is convinced, then the product backlog will be changed. And if not, it will stay the same.